believe there's a lot more to this, just this mere existence, that there has been a life beforehand and a life afterwards, will be a life afterwards, that there's a continuation, and this continuation has everything to do with consciousness. And that's why I just called it an evolution of consciousness. Like, this is just a staging area for one of our experiences that we might have in this evolution. So we came from someplace. I believe we came from a previous existence, and we will go someplace, and I believe that we will go into another experience, if you want to call it that, or another type of life. But I don't believe in that there is a birth or death per se. I believe that there is a stream of consciousness, that it was there before we were born, and that it'll be there after the body dies. And I'm talking about the birth of the body and the death of the body, but not the consciousness itself. I feel that the consciousness is life. I mean, that is the energy that we talk about when we use that word life. We could just as well substitute the word life for the word consciousness. That's how I feel about it. And I feel that our ultimate purpose for being here is that we wake up from the dream of being so involved in this world from the standpoint of forms and shapes, that the material world, that it is not quite as important as we think it is. And I'll explain this as we go along here. I have to acknowledge David R Hawkins, Dr. David Hawkins, for his work he's done in the area of consciousness. He's found a way to, through kinesiology, to measure our level, not only our levels of consciousness, but the levels of consciousness from places and things and animals and plants. So he found a way to really measure the truthfulness of life, the truthfulness of things out there. And I'm not here to talk only about David Hawkins' work, but I think it's very important and very important to acknowledge the work that he did through kinesiology. He would take a subject. He's no longer with us anymore, but he did some extensive work and mapped out actually a map of consciousness. And he would take a person's arm, for example, have them extend their arm, and he would do kinesiology or body testing on them by putting a statement out there. Such a statement, one that I really love, is what level does a purring cat or kitten resonate at from a subconscious standpoint. And he had this measuring system from 1 to 1,000. So he would have preferably like a young person who was non-objective. He often worked with really small children, 12, 13, 14 years old, and he would put a statement out there such as, what level of consciousness does a cat purr at? And he would ask, is it 350? And it would go weak, which means it wasn't the correct answer. Was it 375? And would go weak. Was it 400? And then they would go strong, which means that it was at the level of 400. And then he would tally all of this, and he came up with this map of consciousness for various people, various places, as I mentioned, various things. Very extensive work. All of that can be found through his very popular book called Power versus Force. So many of you have, I'm sure, read that and are aware of his work. But what I wanted to talk about primarily before we do our meditation this evening is the levels of consciousness from the standpoint of really two areas of associating and identifying with forms and shapes in our world through our senses, the things we see and touch and hear and experience, the objects out there, and the unidentification, the state of consciousness where we do not identify with forms and shapes out in the world. And this is really getting into the spiritual aspect of who we are. And consciousness that I'm really referring to from the standpoint of identifying with forms and shapes is the material world. And in this material world, this happens to be the place where our ego appears. And this is what we could actually call our common place when it comes to consciousness. So we can easily, become attached to these things that we see and that we experience in the world. And a few weeks ago, I talked about attachment and how common it is, because we are attached to everything. I mean, that this is a part of the oneness, unfortunately, that is a part of this consciousness, that we are one with everything, but we owe it to ourselves to be very, very much aware of how we can be attached to forms and shapes out in the world. So we can overdo the importance of the material world, but we can also overdo the importance of identifying with our spiritual component as well. So we want to be very careful with that. We often will look for different ways to extend our spiritual experience. And this is very common. This is a part of us kind of coming to the point where we're starting to wake up a little bit. We might have the spiritual insight, something that really makes us feel good. And of course, we want to extend that. We want that to be more. We want to increase that feeling. So it's very common, but we want to, like I said, we want to look out and be careful that we are not thinking that by doing so, we're eliminating the ego, because in many cases, this is the ego having its way with us. The ego is very, very tricky in that way. It can say, well, I'll disguise myself. If you can imagine this, that the ego disguising itself as part of our spiritual practice and kind of fluffing us up, like feeling as if we're really getting somewhere, where we could almost picture the ego standing in the background going, yeah, I'm getting somewhere with this guy, where the ego is still there. So we want to be careful, be aware, and let me just put it that way, and I'll talk a little bit more about it here in a moment. But now, consciousness that is free from forms and shapes are these moments that we lose our identification with the material world. It's not the only thing out there. It's just a small part of, really, it becomes a smaller and smaller part of who we are. It's like it's almost as if you imagine that we are feeling very ill. The only thing that is more important for us is to feel better. And at that point, we really don't care about the material world so much. We care more about what is happening within. And this can even be a little bit of surface too, because if there's physical pain, we could want that to end so bad that we are focused on that pain. But from a spiritual standpoint, we begin to go in and we realize that the material world softens, and the lack of ego and who we really are in this presence is more important than anything else. So ordinary consciousness is actually what we could consider the lowest level of this evolutionary process. So when it comes to consciousness, this level is very not very interested in the present moment. Very little importance of the present moment. And I'm not saying that this is where any of us are necessarily at, but we can definitely associate and relate to this. at this ordinary level of consciousness, it's as if there's very little interest in the present moment, and most of what we focus on is the past and kind of a glorified future of how the past was. That we are a little bit better worker, maybe we're a better husband or a better wife in the future. We're certainly at this level we conform to society a great deal. We want to fit into society. We want to fit in with our friends. We follow the rules. This is an ordinary area for many people. David Hawkins would say that I have a little visitor here, that this is our state of consciousness which would resonate from 1 to 200. Something that we can all relate to, but hopefully we don't get stuck in that area, that we get above the 200 range. In this area, our future, as I said, could be a kind of a glorified future of our past, or it could be a future filled with fear. And also in this area, we strive to be a really good person. We have a willingness to play the role that is asked of us, and our identity is based on these roles. And our identity and who we are and what we identify with is very, very important in this area. And it's basically ego-driven, if you haven't guessed that already. This next level, and this is quite a jump compared to David Hawkins' work, but these are just 3 primary categories. This next level is a level of awakening, and it would be basically from 200 to 400 or 5 or even 600 is where some of the really awake people reside in this area. But at this level, we recognize that we live based on the capacity that our thoughts and emotions and our social roles are not taken as a part of identification of who we are. So, and there's a very profound desire for freedom and to live the truth and to hear the truth, to experience the truth. And this arises naturally within us. And this is when we usually begin our spiritual search. We begin seeking, or the spiritual quest is on. For example, I use this as an example a couple of weeks ago, but the Buddha, when he left his home, he left his family, he left his home as a spiritual seeker, and he was certainly at this level, somewhere in this level of awakening, to have that yearning for answers, for truth, to find out his existence, why he was here. And also in this area, we have a tendency to no longer obey the rules as the Buddha did. He didn't conform to society. The Buddha didn't stay in his home and take care of his wife and children, or a child. He had a newborn baby, which were, by the way, taken care of because they were he came from a very wealthy family. So he was escaping from the rules, he was escaping from authorities, from tradition, and this is the exact same thing that can happen to us when we break free of the confinement of this normal consciousness and go into this level of awakening, this awakening consciousness. We think of new journeys. We take on new journeys without any fear. And I've seen people, talk to people that have kind of knocked on the door of this, and a few weeks later they left their work and they moved on. I mean, literally moved on, because they just had that yearning to go. I'm not suggesting that that we do that or that you do this, I'm just saying that these are the things that can happen when people reach this level, which is a very broad level, by the way, too. This next area is level of complete freedom, and this is a very high level of consciousness. This is what we could probably call the highest peak of consciousness. This is when a person begins to really waken up. They would probably become enlightened by towards the end of this lifetime, or at the time of their death. And there is a deep acceptance of the present moment, and there's a oneness with existence, and a celebration with life in all areas. So we don't necessarily just live a life of bliss, but the suffering that comes along with life is completely accepted. And so there's no pushing back, there's no forcing anything. It's just a life that is free in every aspect. And it is beyond good and evil, and it does not analyze or judge. And we just contemplate. We would probably continue meditation because of the joy of meditation, but we would spend a great deal of time contemplating, not judging. There's a huge difference between contemplating and judging. Contemplating is, I would consider it a spiritual practice when it's done correctly, when we really hone in our decisions and our judgments, as I said, and our commentaries about things. It's just contemplation, pure contemplation. And before we go into this meditation, I want to honor one of the great teachers of the Buddhist tradition that passed away on Saturday. Thich Nhat Hanh passed away at age 95. I've always considered him one of the principal teachers, the teachers of all teachers. He, in the Zen tradition, I felt that Thich Nhat Hanh was one of the primary teachers, especially from recognition from the people of the West. And he treated us Westerners very, very well. He knew exactly what we wanted. When we started becoming really interested in meditation in the 80s, he stepped right in and he was there for us. And he's written over 100 books, a prolific writer, a prolific teacher. He lived a wonderful, wonderful life. And I can't say enough about him. And I would like to dedicate this meditation to Thich Nhat Hanh, and in honor of everything that he's done for the meditation community and everything he's done spiritually throughout the entire world. What a great teacher! What a great person! What an honorable monk he was, and he deserves a small amount of gracious hospitality and thanks that we can give him, for a few moments that we meditate here. So let's dive into a little deeper aspects of understanding these levels of consciousness through this practice of meditation. I don't want you to be struggling with thinking about the words that I'm going to be saying in this meditation. I just want you to relax and really enjoy this. I want my dream would be that everybody would come out of this meditation and feel better, and yet feel a little bit more educated, perhaps, but more inspired with life because of their own practice. So if you could make yourself comfortable and close your eyes if you like. Take a nice deep breath and really feel the breath, and notice how you immediately become present as you do this. Breathing in, you know that you're breathing in. Breathing out, know that you're breathing out. These are some of the words that I first heard Thich Nhat Hanh say in one of his meditations. Breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. Really connecting with the breath. The breath is a tool that we use to become present. It's something that most meditation practitioners are very familiar with. It's a wonderful tool. There's nothing necessarily sacred or spiritual about the breath. It's a tool that we use to recognize our true existence, our Buddha nature, who we are beyond the thinking mind, beyond the past and the future. I would like to guide you through a meditation that is designed to take you from the I am story, or in other words, the association with the world of forms and shapes. I would like to take you from the personal story to the experience of who you are, who you truly are. Some people call this a practice of I am, because we can ask ourselves that question, I am. Not who was I, or who will I be, but this is referring to who you are at this moment. And this understanding of I am is not related to the past or the story of the past. It's not related to the future or the story of the future. But it's rooted in the present moment and is a way of being submerged into the quiet consciousness that you are. So you are sitting here at this very moment. You are sitting here. We could call this me. This is me. And this is a very common experience and should be very familiar to you, so we don't want to dwell on this too long. We don't want to be preoccupied with what you were, or even who you are, or what you will be. Because this is how the entire story is born. The story of what was I, what will I be, what I want to become. And this is ego-dominated, the ego-dominated mind, which keeps revolving around these types of questions, creating a psychological time-bound awareness of the past and the future. So the fact is, you do exist. And you can feel an aliveness within your body, like a vibration. Maybe it's a warmth. And this is actually consciousness. So we can feel consciousness. We can feel that aliveness. It's like these terms are interchangeable. Consciousness is within you. but it's also outside of you. In fact, it's everywhere. Concentrate on this aliveness and keep your attention on this object of meditation. We've moved perhaps from the breath to this alive energy within the body as your meditation object. The aliveness within you. It should feel like a vibration, perhaps. Now, try to divert your attention from this object to the space from which your attention originates from. If you allow a sensitivity to this observance of this aliveness to set in, it may feel as if a new dimension of awareness is discovered. Or possibly it might feel like something has opened up. So the place that your awareness has come from is now felt and understood. But from this place, from where the awareness comes from, can you notice that it comes from a place of presence? Can you now notice that you are experiencing a moment of pure consciousness? You're sensing the mind. You're not sensing the world out there. You're not dealing with the world of form, but you're sensing the world within. You're experiencing the operation of the mind from presence. The awareness, observing the aliveness within the body. And with this observance, there should be a conclusion that there is an existence. I exist. There is an existence, and I ask that you sit with this and pay no attention to any connections to thoughts or ideas. Just rest in the silence, in the quietness of this I am, and stay with that quality observance, this observance of consciousness. As you observe consciousness itself, where are you in the process of this observation? You are the observer. and the one that recognizes the function or the movement of the mind. As you observe, don't worry about the operations of the mind. Stay with the aliveness, the sensation of being alive. This is the I am. When the mind tries to wander away, what is happening is that it's trying to connect with the story, your personal story. It's trying to connect with thoughts and memories. And in essence, this is the ego trying to revive itself. The ego manifesting in one of the old stories of the past or future. So bring your attention back to the aliveness within the body, the I am. This is who you are. Try to keep it there for as long as you can. Gently. The longer we can disconnect from the story, the more clear our recognition of the ego. The ego doesn't have to leave. It's not an enemy. It just has to be recognized. Once the ego is recognized, it can be felt within as a sense of absolute freedom. A liberation from past conditioning. A recognition of a new agreement with life. a life that is unrestricted by the past and rooted in the present moment. And motivated by a connection with all things, with a pervasive love for all. Stay with your meditation object. Some aspect of the body. And what is doing the observation? I am. If you'd like to take a little deeper than normal inhalation of the breath, kind of wake up the cellular system in the body a little bit. bring yourself back to your room, where you are. If you would like to bring your palms together at your heart center, may each one of us and all beings be well, happy, and peaceful. May no harm come to us. May no difficulties come to us. May we all meet with spiritual and worldly success. May we have the patience, courage, and understanding to meet and overcome any problems or any difficulties that we might face in life. Thank you all very much.